Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology. Today I'm bringing you the chart of the full moon in Aries on October 1st at 3:05 p.m. Mountain Time. And the chart is on the screen. We can see here the moon is in the sign of Aries at 9 degrees 8 minutes. And the sun is in the sign of Libra at 9 degrees 8 minutes. So this is what a full moon indicates. It's when the sun and the moon are opposite each other in the heavens. And what this can do, full moons, is to create a bit of a polarization between the two energies, the sun and the moon, and invite us to find the balance between the two expressions, especially in relationships, because any opposition in a chart has the signature of the sign Libra, because in the natural zodiac, you have Aries, the very first sign, naturally opposed the sign of Libra. So there's something about oppositions in general that talk about the self versus other, or in essence, how to experience both the self and include or incorporate our experiences with the other. So that's what oppositions generally can indicate in a chart, in any sign. They take on this energy of Libra in the sense that they relate to relating. So whenever we have something like a full moon, we can expect the energies to play itself out in our relationships with other people. So again, this particular full moon is in the sign of Aries. And Aries is all about the self. It's all about me. It's the very first sign of the zodiac that's symbolic of the sort of essence of our spirit acting out. It's moving out into the world. It's saying to the world, here I am. So there's a lot of energy in Aries, such as courage and strength and force and drive. These are all Aryan qualities. Aries is ruled by Mars, the god of war. So the moon, which is symbolic of emotion and feelings, is in the sign of Aries at this full moon time. So you can kind of get the feeling it's a very fiery full moon. Aries is a fire sign. So the way we express ourselves emotionally is going to come across in a very instinctive, impulsive, possibly even reactionary kind of way. And that would be one thing to actually be aware of as we are experiencing this full moon time, with the sun being in the sign of Libra. So expressing our will and our purpose and our identity in this sign of the balance between ourselves and others. And that is what Libra is all about. It wants to find harmony, and it wants to find fairness. It is about justice, what is just. So we will be, at the same time as we're feeling our very fiery emotional expression, being called upon to also express ourselves through this concept of what is just and what is fair, and to find in some ways our inner dignitary as we approach our experiences with other people, because it could be very easy at this moon and Aries time to just kind of fly off the handle about things. But the sun in Libra is the diplomat. So it does want to weigh the facts. It wants to weigh the fairness of situations, and find, in essence, the justice in situations. Now, what's interesting too is that there's some other things happening at this full moon time. And one of them is that Mars, again, which rules the sign of Aries, is in retrograde in the sign of Aries. So Mars is in its home sign right now, but it's retrograde. So it's going backward from our perspective. It's not really, it's an optical illusion, but it is what is called retrograde, which means we are internalizing the Mars energy more than ever right now, and we are experiencing it probably more intensely within ourselves, but also perhaps reflecting on it and having an opportunity to observe how we use it and perhaps make some adjustments in that process. And what I mean by how we use our Mars is an action energy. It is about our will. It is about our self-assertion. It's our drive. It wants to go after things. It has courage. And of course, again, it's in that sign of Aries, which is very comfortable in. So it just, really wants to act, really wants to go, really wants to do. But what's been happening recently is that Mars has been squaring this Saturn here in the sign of Capricorn. Oh. And the exact square happens on the 29th of September at 3:50 p.m. Mountain Time. And what this is, and this is the first of three squares that have been happening between Mars and Saturn. This is the first time it's happening in Mars's retrograde. But it has happened one time before, and that was on August 24th at 26 degrees of Aries. And then the third time it will happen will be on January 13th. But Mars and Saturn will have moved signs. Mars will now be at 3 degrees of Taurus, and Saturn will be at 3 degrees of Aquarius. But right now we're getting Mars making contact with Saturn as Mars is in its retrograde. And Saturn, what it's doing with Mars right now is that it is restraining the Martian energy. And it's perhaps teaching us, because Saturn is the teacher through lessons, about how we may be able to use our Mars more effectively. Saturn is about efficiency. So they're having in somewhat, kind of a dialogue. Perhaps it's more of a battle between these two energies where, Saturn is kind of saying to Mars, watch how you're doing what you do, because you may have the tendency to fly off the handle about things or to act impulsively around things. And you would do better and be more successful if you really had some patience and some self-control as you're facing any of these challenges that might be coming up. Because yes, Mars squared Saturn may be bringing up challenges and frustrations with people, especially as we approach this full moon in Aries time, a Mars ruled moon time, that is going to be really heightening this Mars energy, or this Aries energy, at the full moon. So the other thing, or the other way this Mars Saturn can play out is perhaps, you need to learn how to express your Mars energy, because it exists. Mars in Aries is what's happening right now. It is retrograde, so we're having more of an opportunity to reflect on it. But, we could be realizing like, hey, I need to stand my ground in a certain situation, or I need to make sure that I'm, standing up for myself. That can very much be a Mars and Saturn square energy as well, where Saturn's giving us the personal authority, to begin to assert ourselves in ways maybe that we haven't before. So it's just a fine line to walk, where we need to make sure that we are not coming from a really reactionary place when we're handling these kinds of situations. And it's probably best with any situation that comes up right now to really give ourselves time, which is a Saturn quality, and perhaps, some space to think about things, to let things sort of settle a bit, so that we aren't just reacting really impulsively to things, that we're really kind of thinking things out and making sure that we are approaching things in the way that we truly want to, rather than the way that we might sort of instinctually just almost unconsciously do. Another piece to this full moon is that Mercury has now moved into the sign of Scorpio. And that happened on September 27th, really early in the morning at 1:41 a.m. Mountain Time. So we are headed into this full moon now with Mercury in a new sign. And it's actually already in its pre-shadow phase, because Mercury will retrograde all the way back to 26 degrees of Libra, I believe. Yes, to 26 degrees of Libra. So we've already got Mercury in its pre-shadow phase, which means it's already dredging up some of the Mercury retrograde issues that we might be dealing with as Mercury goes retrograde. And that's going to happen later on in the month of November on the 13th. And that will also happen at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So Mercury being in this sign of Scorpio during this full moon time is interesting to me, because I think it is really helping us go deeply into perhaps even the psychological understanding of our own challenges, or of the challenges that we're having with other people, because that's what Scorpio does. It is the excavator, the psychological excavator of the zodiac. And it wants to penetrate and look deeply and uncover and expose the shadow and what's in the darkness. So it's a kind of a heavy, energy for Mercury to be in at this time. But I think it's going to be helpful, because it is going to reveal a lot. And not only about ourselves, but about our relationships with other people, and could perhaps ultimately be a good energy to help really be the impetus for clarifying whatever issues are coming up right now, because Scorpio doesn't really take shit. It can see through lies. It's very astute in that way. And so this will just be an energy that will help to get deeper understanding, basically, around situations that might be coming up, especially around this full moon time. And there's another interesting thing happening right at this full moon time, is that Pluto, which is still retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, is in conjunct, or making a 150-degree angle to the North Node at 22 degrees Gemini. And the North Node is where we are collectively headed, as a destiny collectively. And in Gemini, this is about information gathering, logic, understanding. It's about movement, because Gemini is mutable, and it can shift and change based on the incoming information. So this is sort of where we are headed collectively. We are really moving more right now in a direction of understanding things on a logical basis, on a factual basis. What is the information, sharing of information? But it's in conjunct, 150-degree angle to Pluto in Capricorn. And this is this energy of death and transformation. Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, the structures that hold life together on a collective level. This has been what we've been seeing in the revelations and our, the corruption of government structures and authority structures and that kind of thing. So with Pluto in Capricorn in conjunct this North Node, it could just be highlighting where facts and where logic is needing to be really paid attention to, as some of this, crumbling of the outdated structures are continuing to happen. And the inconjunct is a little bit of a strange energy, because it's not an opposition. So you can't really the energies don't fully see each other. They're not illuminated like you would find in an opposition. They've got, they almost like can't see each other. So they're described sort of as an irritation, and that really is just resolved over time as the energies come more into light. So I would say Also, though, that this could be like being aware of not being too overpowering, because Pluto can do that, especially when it doesn't want to see the truth. You know, Plutonian energy the shadow can be control, manipulation, trying to strong arm people, or, you know, to do what you want them to do. So it's important that we're using logic and not getting drawn into the emotional turmoil of things, and allowing that to be the driving force behind our decisions, as opposed to really, you know, just kind of, what are the facts, just the facts, please, about a situation, and using logic in order to resolve issues. I think that's everything I want to say about the chart. I do want to read a couple of things about going back to the full moon from Inside Degrees, Elias Lonsdale. I often read the inside degree of the full moon or the new moon. And I'm going to read Aries at 10 degrees, because again, our full moon is at 9 degrees, 8 minutes, but because it's beyond 9, you actually move to the next degree. And this says, roots of a tree entwined around the statue of a nude woman. Bondage and freedom sometimes go hand in hand. The bondage being true to pattern, predictable, caught in habits and tendencies, perpetually left to grow like weeds. The freedom is that as you meet yourself starkly in the midst of these old, tired patterns of behavior, you come into touch with a quickening flame of self-recreation or recreation, stimulated and forced by being at the mercy of the relentless patterns. This impulse to make yourself over is fervently strong, courageous, ready and willing. The old stuff dies hard. You are therefore engaged in a pitched battle of a protracted kind between retrogressive and progressive ideals, impulses, and desires. Both sides are so impassioned and sharply intent that this becomes a knockdown, drag-out battle of wills. The atavistic, backward-leaning will feels immune to change. The visionary forward-thrusting will feels moved by evolutionary forces never to give up. Eventually, the future prevails over the past, but not before scars and multiple traumas mark the spot of fighting for your life against an implacable inward enemy who knows it will lose and fights all the harder accordingly. That's pretty powerful. It's kind of talking about how when we are faced with change, sometimes it's really difficult because the old can kind of dig its heels in and not want to make the change. It's the habits, it's the way we've always done things. And that's very much the moon. Moon are our habits that hold on, or we hold on tightly to, and don't allow as easily for the change to occur. But it does talk about eventually the future prevails over the past, not before scars and multiple traumas mark the spot of fighting for your life against an implacable inward enemy who knows it will lose and fights all the harder accordingly. I mean, it's almost like we're our own worst enemies, it's suggesting at times. And now that I'm seeing this here, the Chiron in Aries is 7 degrees right here next to the moon at 9 degrees. So that's a pretty tight conjunction at this new moon, at this full moon time. Chiron is the wound, the wounded healer. And what this can be highlighting at this time is memories from the past, our moon, related to our personal wounds in the area of self-assertion. Whether somewhere along the way, our ability to self-assert may have become wounded, and either we acted out in a very hindered way where we don't stand up for ourselves, or we try to overly identify with, being the macho person or the strong person, or, we're like overly compensating for that internal wounded energy. So what I just find that very interesting at this new moon time, that's such a close conjunction. It will definitely be a theme that might be motivating some of this resistance, some of this resistance to change, or this resistance to be able to find harmony and balance and fairness and tactfulness. And, it's up to all of us to kind of understand how that might be playing itself out, because again, it could be being overly confident and boisterous, but it could also be not being able to stand up for ourselves enough, and only kind of where that is. But I would say for sure the Saturn Mars energy is playing out into this full moon picture, because it's talking about necessary restraint, but also maturity and practicality and personal authority in dealing with matters. So it looks like it can kind of manifest in a variety of ways, and it's important for us to sort of discover that for ourselves. And the last thing I wanted to read was the card that I chose for this full moon chart. And what I came up with from the Jimmy Wanless Voyager Tarot deck was this card called Equilibrium, which I found perfect for a full moon with the moon in Aries and the sun in Libra. And that's the Two of Cups. And the cups are water. It's emotion and feeling. The cup as a container symbolizes the management of your feeling or your feelings, resulting in emotional equilibrium. So the management of your feelings. Emotional stability, like the river, means going with the natural flow of your feelings. Yet like the duck vase, you are riding on top of these emotional waters, particularly during the blues and the unexpected twists and bogs in the rivers of life. If equilibrium derives from emotional self-sufficiency, an inner reservoir of emotional vitality that enables you to be sunny, the yellow flowers, in the coldest of times. The ever-full cups of the mountain watershed and the flowering cactus plant, even in the driest and prickliest of conditions, symbolizes the spring of life within you. So it is really talking about emotional maturity. And it's talking about being emotionally self-resilient. And I think this full moon chart is really bringing that up. It's talking about how it's really up to us to kind of deal with our emotions and to deal with our feelings. It doesn't mean our feelings and emotions aren't valid, but it's how we use our emotions and feelings in our relationships that's really going to decide whether or not a situation, turns out with equilibrium and balance, or whether it's just going to totally like implode. And I've been seeing this a lot in my own life with, the handling of some challenges, and I've seen it with other people in my life. And, we can get easily upset at this time, but I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, how is that helping us? It's good to acknowledge it, maybe more in the privacy of our own experience, but when we're dealing with our relationships with other people, how does really being attached to our emotions and our feelings get what we want to get accomplished? That Saturn there squaring the Mars, how does it help us? And I think that can be the question that we can really ask ourselves. And this card is suggesting, riding the waves of emotion, being on top of the emotion and the feeling, so that we're not dragged down and bogged down and really knocked off of our equilibrium as we're trying to navigate these emotional waters. Wishing you a very happy and healthy full moon in Aries, and really give yourself the space that you need at this full moon time, because with the full moon in Aries, it can be a very heated time. And we just want to make sure, again, with that Mars-Saturn square and the moon opposite Libra, with the Mercury and Scorpio, that it can also have a bit of an edge to it, or through our communication, that we're being responsible with our experiences, rather than just allowing, again, the emotion to control us all. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my video, please subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.